All right. Since we briefed yesterday afternoon, the track has indeed shifted back east. So we are looking at the main impacts from Francine to be over the Gulf waters and into Louisiana, and maybe even some areas east of there. We still are expecting some gusty winds, some rain, and moderate to minor coastal flooding at the coast. So let's go ahead and talk about this in more detail. So what has changed? We have seen a eastern shift, really the last three advisories of Francine, which means minimal impacts for southeast Texas away from the immediate coast. At the Gulf Coast, expect maximum wind gusts Wednesday 30 to 40 miles per hour. Along Galveston Bay, more like 25 to 30 miles per hour. Can't rule out a few gusts to tropical storm force. There is a tropical storm watch in effect for those areas, those coastal areas, but this may be dropped this afternoon if this more easterly track is confirmed. So we did have a question whether the watch would be dropped, and we have had some discussions with the Hurricane Center about that, maybe trying to encourage that to happen. So we may have more news on that this afternoon. We are expecting some rain for the immediate coast in the outer bands. I'll show you the radar in a moment. You'll see there is some rain parked just offshore. We will be on the northwest fringe of this system. So not too far inland, there'll be very little rain at all. Can't rule out some isolated rainfall flooding right along the coast as outer bands try to work in, but there will be little rain inland. So even along the coast, any flooding issues would be very isolated in nature. Even with this more easterly track, we still expect minor to moderate coastal flooding. There will be some water pushed onto land and also some wave action, some long period swell and waves hitting the coastline. So the Gulf Coast would expect to see some high water and some beach erosion. And then we'll have to look at the bay side as the storm pulls away. Sometimes we'll get some water pushed in the bay ahead of the system. And then as the winds become northerly, it gets piled on the bay side north-facing coastlines. So we'll have to look out for that later Wednesday and Wednesday night. Here's a look at the updated cone. You can see it's quite a shift from what we briefed yesterday afternoon. That center now expected to be over making landfall on the central or even eastern Louisiana coastline. And you can see that in yellow we have that tropical storm watch still in effect for our coast, but with the further east track, we truly are on the fringe of the higher winds. So again, we'll see if that may be able to be dropped later this afternoon. I did want to show this particular model sequence. Don't focus on the details here. This is just one model's view of events, but it does show the general idea, showing the hurricane / tropical storm Francine sort of paralleling the Texas coast, but well offshore. Also notice we're on the fringe of the banding and the rainfall areas on the northwest side. So again, minimal impacts, certainly just inland, not expecting a whole lot. But we still, on the fringes of this, could get some gusty winds, maybe a little bit of rain at the coast. Just a marginal threat right now of any isolated flooding from rainfall. Even with the offshore track, we still will get waves and swell coming off that, hitting the coastline. So there could be some surge impacts nonetheless. Here's a look at the satellite imagery. Last night, the storms around the center pretty much eroded and dissipated as dry air wrapped in around the circulation. Thunderstorms developing around the center, as you can see there. Also notice all the thunderstorm activity and so intensify last night as we thought it might, but with the new storm development around the center, probably signals a round of intensification occurring today, likely bringing Francine back into hurricane status, or rather up into hurricane status. Looking at the latest radar, you see the swirl off the Mexican coast there, southeast of Brownsville. That's the center of circulation. You can also see this rain band parked just offshore. It's possible that rain will work its way into the coastline, and that's why we have that just marginal flood threat for the coastal counties. Just inland, probably very little rain from this. Going quickly through the wind probabilities, you can see tropical storm force winds are pretty much certainty offshore. Right along the immediate coast, we've got sort of a 30 to 50% chance. And just inland, it's more like 10 to 30. And this is meant to account for changes in track and size. So, this may even be a bit overdone, but it does show the higher chances are definitely at the coastline for tropical storm force winds. Looking at the 58 mile per hour or greater winds, sometimes we use this as an indicator of power outage concerns. And you can see for this level of wind, you really have to go offshore and well offshore to see those levels of winds. So again, over the land areas, not overly concerned about power outages. Of course, we can always get scattered power outages even with lower level winds, but you can see the risk is going to be more across Louisiana. Then hurricane force winds, again, this is shifted from yesterday to well offshore. And I can say one change we made for our offshore waters is to change a hurricane warning to a tropical storm warning for the areas well off of Galveston. Wind timing, the highest winds are due to come in, as we've been saying, pretty much all week, tonight into tomorrow morning. Again, they're going to be marginal, though, for the land areas, stronger, certainly offshore. Here's a look at the storm surge flooding. Really haven't made many changes to this. Now, I'll show you the water level guidance in a moment, and you'll see it has trended back just a tad, but it doesn't account for the wave action on the Gulf-facing beaches. So keep that in mind. We still think with the more easterly track, we will have some minor to, in some cases, moderate coastal flooding issues on vulnerable areas like Bolivar, perhaps Surfside also. And again, the coastal flood warning, this is really hasn't changed since yesterday. Looking at the water level guidance for Eagle Point, if you remember yesterday, these were showing values of 4 to 5 feet above mean lower low water. You see now we're down to more around 4 feet, given a storm surge of about 2 feet. Storm surge meaning the difference between astronomical tide and observed. We've got that 2 feet to add on, and that brings us up to around 4. So that's a level we typically see some minor coastal flooding around Galveston Bay. And again, the timing of that is right around daybreak tomorrow morning, around the high tide. That's our tide of concern, greatest concern for the western part of Galveston Bay. Did want to say something about the north-facing beaches. In that case, we want to keep an eye out too for the Wednesday night, Thursday morning high tide. That's when water could pile up on the bayside beaches for, let's say, Galveston Island. Galveston Bay Entrance, again, you see a range there, maybe a ½ foot lower than we were briefing yesterday, kind of in that 4 to 4.5 foot range. And again, waves add on top of this. So again, timing wise, I believe this may be incorrect. Let me fix that. The timing should be, no, this is correct. This is believe there may be an error on the time labeling here. We're looking at Tuesday night, Wednesday morning. So this is correct. The high tide again will be our tide of concern for the Gulf facing beaches. Then we get offshore flow. and that'll eliminate the concern as we get into Wednesday night for the Gulf side. Freeport, again, a little bit lower than we briefed yesterday, so perhaps more of a minor coastal flood issue. But again, on the Gulf side, we'll have the wave action, so we still think there will be impacts for places like Surfside, for example. Looking at rainfall, again, take a look at this. This is quite a bit of a reduction from the past few days. Now just 1 to 2 inches along the coast, and that's dependent on those rain bands that are currently parked right offshore that I showed you, making it in. You know, if they do get in for any length of time, you know, we could see even a shade more than that, but you can see the flood threat areas north of there less than an inch, so including the city of Houston. So not a big rainfall, not a big concern with this system. Nonetheless, we do have the excessive rainfall outlooks shown here, the green being the lowest of the risk areas, indicating a marginal risk. And again, we're really intending to highlight the coast for this isolated threat of flash flooding, both today and tomorrow morning. Forecast confidence has come up. The Eastern track forecast is pretty consistent with all the tracking models. The storm has made that turn now, starting to lift north-northeast, so that's a good sign. So again, we're expecting fairly minimal impacts for southeast Texas away from the coast. And at the coast, we're looking at wind gusts 30 to 40 miles per hour along the Gulf coastline, maybe 25 to 30 along Galveston Bay at the peak of the event tomorrow. Tropical storm watch is in effect currently, but may be dropped for some areas if this more easterly track continues. So look for that perhaps this afternoon. We are looking at some rain in the coastal counties in outer bands. I showed you on radar there is a band just offshore now on the northwest fringe of Francine. Can't rule out some isolated rainfall flooding right along the coast, but other than that, very little impact and very little rain as you go inland. And then probably the big concern still is going to be this minor to moderate coastal flooding and some beach erosion from waves pounding the coastline. Of course, rip current concerns. I don't know that anyone's going to be in the surf. Hopefully not, but that's worth a mention as well. And again, we'll need to watch the north-facing bayside beaches tonight as the winds shift more northerly. You can get some water piling up there.